Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to show you in detail how to make cob using a tarp. So to me, using a tarp is the more labor intensive way of making cob, but it's essential to understand how to make cob with this method. This is more of a time consuming, labor intensive method to make cob, but I always teach this method because it's very important for getting an understanding of how to make cob. You get a really good feel for the material so that when you do, if you ever do use machinery to make cob, you know what's being turned out. You know what to look for. You know what feel, texture to look for. Okay, so in the video here, I'm dry mixing the material. You'll see I put the sand and the subsoil in the middle of the tarp, just dry, and I'm pulling the tarp back and forth to dry mix it. So you want to pull the tarp back and forth probably 4 or 5 times, at least to get it roughly mixed up, so there's a good mixture consistency between the two materials. And this is doing the tarp method with one person. Some people like to do it 2 people on a tarp. I actually prefer 1 person per tarp. Okay, so now what I'm doing here is I'm making a little hole in the top of the mound, and that's where I'm going to put the water. So it's a lot like making concrete in the sense that you want to add a little bit of water at a time, and don't add a lot, because if you add too much, it's really hard to take it out. You'll have to let it dry in the sun, which is a slow process. So add a little bit of water at a time. And now I'm just kind of getting that water mixed in the pile. And I'm using my feet here, obviously, but I'm really trying to dig in with my heels. You can sink into the materials deeper if you use your heels, as opposed to flat feet. Okay, so I mixed that up a little bit, and I'm turning it over. Place the tarp back flat. And it needs a little more water here, so I'll give it a little spray down. And I can tell it's going to need quite a bit of water here at the beginning, so I put on a good bit there. So now I start mixing that in again. And it starts to get flat. Usually when it flattens out like a pancake, then you know it's time to flip the material over with the tarp. So you can see it's getting a little bit of a shine to it with that water, but it's still not enough. It's still quite crumbly at this point, so it needs a lot more mixing. So there's flat. Now I'm flipping it over. And there we go again with the water. And stomping it out again. And this video in particular is being filmed in Florida, in northern Florida. And the soil there is very sandy in comparison to most places. At least most places in the United States, continental United States. So with this type of soil particularly, I have to add extra water because of the high amount of sand, just to get that more sticky consistency. So there's a lot of different variations depending on what kind of soil you have. But the same principles apply. Nothing is changing in the process with this soil as opposed to any other soil. It's just that with this one I do have to add a little extra water. So as you see, it's just a back and forth, stomping it, adding a little water, stomping it out, rolling it over. And it's a long process. I'll be quite honest, it's a long process to mix cob by foot. And that's why I don't do it very often, unless I'm doing a very small project, like a cob oven, or maybe a small cob bench or something small scale. I usually don't mix cob by foot anymore. And in the course here, I'll be teaching you the mechanized options that work best for mixing cob. And they're basically 100 times faster than this. So you'll learn those in the course here. How to mix with a mortar mixer, how to mix with a tractor, how to mix with a backhoe. But again, this lesson is very important for understanding the cob material. You feel the material throughout this process, mixing by feet, touching it, testing it, and it's just a very valuable thing to experience. So there I go again, putting some more water, and you'll see I'm adding a little bit less each time than I was at the start of the process, because it's starting to get saturated more, and I don't want to oversaturate it at this point. And you'll see it's starting to get a lot more mushy, and that's a good sign. It sort of has a consistency similar to Play-Doh. That's kind of the way I've always seen it. And we're about halfway through this mixture. So you have at least some sense here already about what it takes to mix cob. To mix cob by foot, especially. So if you imagine trying to build a building using this method, it's going to take a very, very long time. Unless you had a very large labor force helping you to mix a cob, this is extremely slow if you want to build any kind of building. And there are people who can mix a batch of cob on a tarp in, I've seen some people do it in 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. But it's still an intense amount of labor, a lot of energy to put into such a thing for such a small result. So for me, it's more of a lesson to teach people, to get the feel and the understanding, as opposed to a practical and efficient method of mixing cob for any kind of serious building. And you'll see there in the background the small cob cottage we're building. This cob cottage here is only about 140 square feet interior, but we've been using a mortar mixer throughout this project, and it's still taken us with a team probably 7 weeks to complete the walls on this building, with a team of between maybe on average 6 people. So yeah, here I'm putting the straw. Okay, putting a little more water, because sometimes that straw sucks up the water that's in the cob. So you want to give it a little bit extra moisture there. And the fiber you put in, it's hard to measure it. If you want to give it a measurement, you could say 10%, but it's hard to measure that really. I usually eyeball just kind of what looks right to me as far as how much straw to put in. Some people like more straw, some people like less. I tend to go with less, especially, again, it depends on the soil that you have. In this particular case with the Florida soil being so sandy, I put less straw because if you put too much, it really tends to be too flaky and too dry. So I put less straw in with this. Now if you have a very dense, thick soil, for example, in Georgia, Tennessee, we have very dense, thick clay soil. It takes the straw a lot better, so you can put a lot more. So you'll see this is kind of an art and a science combined. There's a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to know that come through experience. So again, I put the straw in there and I mix it in by foot. Same process, roll it over, stomp it again, and roll it over again. So same process. And it's almost getting near completion. Technically the point it's at right here, you could build with this, it would be fine, but I'm going to try to take it to an ideal sort of state to show you what you really want to look for. And again, depending on what kind of soil you have, you might get to this point quicker. See, it turns into like a burrito shape when you roll it up. That's really what you're looking for. That sort of shows that you've gotten it to a state of completion and it's thoroughly mixed. And here I'm just mixing it a little bit more just to show you a really good example. Flip it over again. And you see it's kind of rolling up together. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's looking pretty good there. So that's definitely good to build with at that point.
Well,
See how it does here. Yeah, that's good. Hey guys, if you like this video, hit the thumbs up button and also subscribe and hit the notification bell for more video updates. And also, if you like this material and you want to learn more about how to build a cob house or a cob building, I've got a link in the description below taking you to my brand new video course on how to build a cob house, and I take you step by step through the whole process of how to build a cob building, start to finish. I cover all components and aspects of cob building, natural building, and even some rammed earth building. So go click that link if you're interested. All the information's on that page, and I hope to see more of you guys there. Thanks.